generations in a row. All the future kings and all the future queens looking at the hero of their show. Hard to build.
Welcome to Music is the Drug, the Cowboy Junkies podcast. I'm Dave Bowler, and I write the biography of Cowboy Junkies, Music is the Drug. Welcome to the third part of our special series of podcasts to mark the release of Cowboy Junkies' new album, Such Ferocious Beauty. With the help of music from the album, some demos, and an excerpt from an as yet unreleased track, this time we're talking to Alan Anton to get his take on the album, its writing and production, and on playing it live. I started out by asking him about his writing process.
Yeah, so I'm always, doodling with stuff at home, and once we decide that we're ready to start a work on a new record, then things will pick up a bit, and we'll start sending stuff back and forth, demo stuff, and see where our heads are at, basically. Mike sometimes will have a kind of a concept of his own, which will be sort of sidetracked by what, depending on what he gets from me, and things will often take a new direction. So there's a lot of things going on at once once we get into it.
How long does that sort of process go on for?
Well, during COVID, it took a long time because we had a long time. There's not a lot else going on, so we just spent tons of time in our own studios, and then eventually got together in the Toronto studio and put it all down. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with the next one. There might be a more of a structured time frame on it, so we might work quicker. It all depends on what we're doing, and also we weren't touring during that last album, so that puts a different spin on things too. So when we're together more and talking about it more, touring, things will probably come together. Ideas tend to come together quickly when we're together.
Was there any sort of specific direction before you started this, or was it just what you were putting together and then it starts to take shape, once the two of you have knocked it back and forward a bit?
Yeah, Mike usually gets his his lyrical mindset going first, and starts working on things. Sometimes they'll bring Margot in to work with her, but otherwise he'll just figure it out by himself, the vocal melodies and things. And so he'll send me demos of what he's doing, and I'll send him demos of what I'm doing, and I'll work on his stuff, and he fits stuff into my stuff, and it just becomes a bit of a soup at that point, trying to figure out where things should go.
He says it's made life much easier for him, the more stuff that you send.
Yeah, for sure it does. We used to just do it in the studio in Toronto all the time together, but this way I have more time to work on specific ideas and develop them further in my own studio before taking them into the band. So things can get a little more, developed from the start, which is helpful for everyone.
I mean, when you're working musically in the studio, do you have a particular direction? I want us to go in that direction. There's a particular sound or a particular style that I want us to go.
Yeah, a lot of it's influenced by what I've been listening to. Like very recently, I may have just heard a song, and that sticks in my head. And next time I'm in the studio, I'm sort of going in that direction. Like, for one of the songs on the new album, Hard to Build, I just listened to a couple of songs that influenced that one directly, which was "The Woman of the World" by Aerosmith, and a Bad Company song. I forget which one it was. They all because they all kind of are similar. It's a classic Bad Company sound, like just straight ahead classic rock kind of thing, with a kind of a groovy thing going on. So I just had those two in my head, and I remember sitting down in the afternoon in the studio, and that just clicked. I put on that kind of beat on my little beatbox and started playing along to it, and built it up pretty quickly within a couple of days.
I don't know, do you react against the record that you made last? Do you want to do something different, particularly different from that, or do you want to build on what you did the last time kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't really think in those terms. It's more what strikes me musically. So if I'm sitting down with the bass or the keyboard or whatever, and I just come up with a line that strikes me, I'll just follow that, find a beat for it and keep going and build a song, build it into a song. That's sort of my interest, is just accidentally finding things that strike me is what I do in the studio.
I guess that must be easier in some ways with the keyboards, because that's a comparatively recent addition to the sound, isn't it? I mean, I guess with bass, you've been playing bass for so long, it must be difficult to surprise yourself or happen upon things.
Yeah, and also you realize, the thing that bass players hate the most is that a keyboard player can do their job with one hand, right? So you've got the other hand open to do other stuff on the keyboard while you're working that stuff out. So yeah, you turn into a bit of a Ray Manzarek kind of mindset when you're doing that. Although it's really hard. I can't really do that. I can't separate one hand doing something and the other hand doing another thing. My brain doesn't really work that way, especially after playing bass for so long. Both hands working to do the same thing, right?
When you look at those old videos of, I don't know, Rick Wakeman or Tony Banks or somebody, and it's, they're playing like three keyboards at once. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. While wearing a cape too.
Will there be any capes on the next tour?
Very small ones. You won't be able to see them. They'll be tucked into my chute.
What kind of keyboards do you use? I mean, they all sound sort of old analog-y kind of thing.
Yeah, I've been using the one I like the most right now is the Nord. It's called the Electro 6, and it's kind of a 3-section keyboard. So it's got a organ section and a piano section, and then a kind of a synthy section. The great thing about it is that you can find sounds in each of those sections and then combine them into one, to use them all at once. So you come up with these really cool sounds. I find if you stay with the piano and the organ, always have at least one of those in with the synth sounds, it tends to sound really analog just because of that, of the original, organ and piano tones. So, you can introduce a lot of. The problem with our band is that synthesizer sounds don't really go with what we've been doing. So, but I do like, the sounds that you can make that are just completely different from any other instrument, obviously, with synthesizers. So that's what I like about combining them with the organ and the piano tones together, because they don't stand out, but they're there and they make, it turns something kind of simple into something a little more exciting or shimmering or whatever. And it's really fun to play around with that. You can do that for weeks on end, of course. You can just waste so much time. But when you do find a sound, that really works for you. You sort of stay with it for, at least to work on one full song with it. And the other keyboard I've always liked. So the first thing I bought was a Dave Smith Mofo, which is just a monophonic little thing, but it made some really cool sounds, and I still use that a lot on the recordings. And the other thing I have is the Moog Sub 37, which I don't use that much, but you can get a lot of sounds out of that thing. It's really complicated. So I haven't really used it much, but I have used a few things off of it. And it's obviously really good for bass. That's what it's for, the sub stuff. So like on the new album, I've got a couple of tracks that have key bass instead of string bass at first on it. So yeah, those are the ones. And piano, of course, acoustic piano we always use that for something.
Because it's really made a difference to the sound of the last 3-4 records.
Beyond mercy, beyond judgment, beyond anything that you can pretend. To offer in that outstretched hand, beyond the soul, grace descends.
Yeah, I mean, it builds up sonically from what we've always done in the past is, our sonic palette was mostly in the guitar end of things because that's where the pedals are and all the effects. So Mike was doing a lot of that work. So this has opened up a new sound area for us to explore. And I think we've been doing it's the third album, I guess, we've been doing it with. And so yeah, we tend to leave space for other sounds when we're working songs up these days, knowing that we don't have to fill it all with just the 4 instruments that we use.
This record, I've said before, I think this is as good as any record that you've done. I think it's really right up there, and it's got a very band feeling to it. Like everybody's, in the same direction. Everybody's equally involved, and it's got that real, I don't know, cohesion to it, I suppose is perhaps the best word.
Yeah, that's important for this record for sure, because it always started out as that kind of thing, like from the band playing the songs. We didn't want to have any kind of studio only quality to it. Really, we wanted to make it sound like this is really the band playing, and so we wanted to be careful not to with all the extra sounds that we are putting in, not to stretch it out to a point where you're making a great sounding record, but it doesn't really sound like a band playing. So like we wanted to make sure we were staying solid in that ground.
But it seems there's a lot of input from everybody as well. I mean, the way Margot sings it, Pete's obviously bringing different kinds of playing into it. It really does feel like the 4 of you all in the same place at the same time, kind of thing. I mean, I know that's not necessarily how the records are made, but you know what I mean. Mentally, it feels like that.
Yeah, well, I think it is. I mean, even though we're not in the same place doing it, I think it like we made a really conscious effort to hear all the demos going back and forth all the time, every step of the way, and making our input known right away rather than letting it ride and forgetting about it. So yeah, it was really, and like I said, during COVID, it was nothing else going on in our lives, so we devoted all our time to that. So it was kind of easy to to focus on it in the COVID vacuum. But yeah, it was important to keep all the human input levels going and fired up at all times.
You co-produced it with Mike. I mean, did the COVID thing make it difficult? I mean, I suppose it was coming out of it and the protocols were being relaxed a bit by the time you got to that stage. Did you go to Toronto to work with it, or was it back and forth by email?
It was all back and forth until we did the final session of recording everything. So everything else can be considered as demos, and then we all get together to record all our bits in one time period, and then which took about, I don't know, a couple of weeks or 3 weeks, something like that. And then the mixing after that, of course, takes a bit. So yeah, I mean that's the idea, is that all the demo pieces are floating around for a long time, and they all cohese into something, and then we know we're ready to get together to put it down.
It was like on records where at the start and end of tracks you can hear people talking or putting the instruments down and all that kind of thing. And I mean, obviously that usually gets wiped out as a record, but that's in, and that again, that gives it a certain quality, I think.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that, because you don't want people to get bored of it after they've listened to it 100 times, right? So it's got to be something that you can listen to over and over. So we'll know immediately when we hear something, some bit of talking or a casual dropping of drumsticks or whatever like that on the track. We'll know if it's worthy of being heard many times, or if it's going to be really boring after a couple of times. So yeah, we always have a bunch of that, and we listen to those intro bits, and think, okay, maybe that could stay forever. But it's a tough call because it stays forever. So, but the one classic one is the Dylan one, where he says, "Are we rolling, Bob?" That stayed on that. I forget what song that was, but that's the classic intro leave it on because it's cool thing.
Obviously, Joby Baker's involved with this again, with some of the mixing and stuff. And I guess you're the one that kind of sits in with him being in Vancouver.
I think what happened was that we sent him the songs, and he did a pass at the mix, and we sent in our input after that, and then he went about that, and then I went over there for a few days and went through it all with him and finalized it. And yeah, I think he did a great job. He got it to a point where we could just come in at the very end and just do a few tweaks, and that was it.
I guess that's important, having somebody on the outside, having another set of ears on it. I mean, obviously you want it to be how you want it to be, but having somebody with a bit of distance.
Yeah, that's always good because Mike is the one who does the mixing by himself at first in the Toronto studio, and he'll get to a point where he just can't hear it anymore. And if we're still not happy, if we're still talking about fixing this and that, then we know we need to have somebody else maybe step in and get some fresh ears.
It always seems to me it takes an incredible amount of time for records to come out these days. Mike said you were waiting about, I don't know, 6, 7 months, 8 months after you'd finished it to the point at which it gets out to the public. That must be frustrating.
Yeah, it is a bit, but at the same time, by the time it does come out, we're ready to listen to it again and play the songs live and get more excited about it probably than we would if it came out right away and we had to play them all, after having gone through all that. But we just talked about mixing and losing our ears on it and hearing it a million times and all that. So it's nice actually for us to have that distance before we start playing it live again, and to hear it again when you're doing all the promo for it and all that. It's nice to be kind of fresh about it. Like right now, I'm kind of excited about it. Talk to me 7 months ago, I don't know what I would have told you.
One of the things I like about it is it doesn't outstay its welcome. And I guess that's one of the things about writing for vinyl rather than for CD. It's just long enough that you can keep your attention on it, you can focus on it properly, and it doesn't start to get tiring the way that, a lot of records when they insist on making them an hour long or whatever.
Yeah, we've always had trouble with that. There's a lot of great records around, but in the CD era, you're right, they were an hour long, which was just a bit too long because by the time you finish it, you've forgotten what you've listened to.
We went through different eras, didn't we? I mean, when you were first making records, if you had extra tracks, you'd put them on the B side of a single, and then you put them all on the CD because that was, it was kind of a value for money thing, I think, wasn't it? With the CD, it needed to be 60 minutes long. And now we're back to vinyl again, but there's no B sides anymore. So I mean, if you have extra tracks, whatever happens to those nowadays?
He's a man that can walk away. The terror that the winter brings. Pack his bags and turn his back. Never again to feel the spring. Let everything happen to you.
Yeah, you just same thing. You just hang on to them and either put them on the next record if it still works conceptually, or if not, keep them around for 20 years and then put them out eventually, right? Like everybody's doing. So yeah, sure. And they really are. I find a lot of the songs that you stick in the corner for a while, deserve it, because if you're not excited about it at first, I don't think you're going to be when you go back and listen to it again and say, "Oh, that was so great. We should have put it on the record." I don't think that's ever happened with our band. Not that they're not good songs; they're just not good enough to be one of the 10 songs that you're putting out every 2 years. But they're still good songs. But when you put out a record, it's got to be a special thing.
What I lost, obviously, was the first one. We've talked about that a little bit, but I mean, how did that come together from your end?
That one, I think, if I remember correctly, was an acoustic number. Yeah, when I first heard it, I think Marg had put a vocal on it with just Mike playing, and I think Mike added a couple other little things to it. Can't remember exactly what, but and I liked it as it was. I thought maybe it should stay as an acoustic-y kind of track like that with no bass and drums or anything else. And yeah, it sat there for a while like that, and then Mike decided that he wanted to be bigger and full band, so we worked on that. And yeah, so I think it was like my input on that one was kind of secondary to the completed track. Really, yeah, it didn't. I don't think it changed much from the original, just acoustic thing.
I looked to the skies, they offered reprieve. I looked to the moon, found you sitting in the right-hand seat. Stars in your eyes as we study the skies. We slowly glide above the Quebec countryside. Moon splashing frozen, the river our guide. Now I feel you exhale a low, soft sigh. And this is
The writing obviously comes from a personal place, but his writing tends to be more universal in expression. So I don't think that Margot's singing about her father. I don't hear it that way when I first hear the song. I just hear this impressionistic description of somebody going through some kind of a loss. And I like to keep it abstract in my mind, anyways. When I hear the songs, and when I hear anybody's songs, really, they may have written it from a personal perspective, but if they're writing it more in a more universal aspect, then I go along with that end of it, and I think that's much more enjoyable. But yeah, no, I mean, and also my parents have passed as well, so where everybody I know is at the age where we're all going through that or having just done that. So it's not something that you can't relate to, that's for sure.
Flood, that bass figure is very, very much sort of sound that I associate you with.
Yeah, that was one of the things just that pops up that you think, oh, that's cool, and then try to find a beat for it, and then adding the piano figure to it was the thing that for me held the whole thing together, and I didn't want to take it away from that original idea. So I didn't want to put a bridge in it or a chorus or anything like that. It just sort of does this cycle and then repeats four or five times. And I thought it was strong enough to hold, to do that, hold your attention just by repetition.
I mean, that goes back very much to that stuff we talked about when we were talking about 1979, doesn't it? That the idea of the Cure and the Fall and bands like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's still my favorite kind of my favorite expression, I guess, of rock and roll is just that repetitive drive. You find a good groove and you go with it. Velvet Underground obviously is there too with that. The idea of the pop song has always been kind of difficult for us, where you have to change and do different things every however many bars. And we've always thought from the beginning that, well, we're playing something cool. Why do we have to change? So we've always had the long repetitive thing going on, especially live. We stretch it out a lot. and it's really still satisfies us a lot musically. So, even though our song structures have changed into more of a conventional thing with first chorus bridge and all that stuff, we still try to maintain an element of the jamming side of the band. Even in those kind of songs, we try to introduce things that are keep that ethos going, I guess.
Mike said that sort of relentless nature of that figure, that bass figure, was what inspired the lyric, because he said it sounded like a flood. It sounded like the water keep. Do you ever, when you're writing musically, do you get images like that, or?
No, Mike's a real kind of a naturalist or nature lover or something. So I don't know if you've noticed, but he writes a lot of songs about rivers and birds and stuff and trees. And yeah, I'm completely opposite. I just wallow in cool grooves. I don't have any images that go along with it. Maybe on that one it sounded to me like kind of a menacing or pouncing or kind of animal in a sense, but no, the answer is no. I don't think in that imagery at all, because I don't need to, because I don't write words. So, that's the difference between what Mike's doing. He's writing lyrics all the time. So of course he needs imagery.
Watching the water rise, caught between the river and the rock face, watching the water rise. Should I follow it down to where the river meets the sea? Or let it devour me, riven and floating free?
The way you and Pete work off one another on this song is, that's a really great example of your relationship, I think.
Yeah, that works really well. It's difficult beat for sure, and we haven't done it live yet, so we'll see how that goes. See how long it stays together. But yeah, it's kind of like there's three different parts: drum, bass, and piano, that are all doing different things that shouldn't go together, but they do somehow. And it takes a while to hear it, I think, when you're first listening to the song, to hear the beat and the melodies. And the screeching guitar on top, of course, throws you up a little bit at first too, but it all comes together pretty quickly, I think.
It's funny that sound at the start, when I was talking to Mike about the I initially thought that was a keyboard sound of some kind. Of course, it's his pedals going berserk.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is there's a really close correlation between keyboard sounds and guitar pedal sounds that which I talked about earlier, is that we're using a lot of the keyboard sounds but in addition to the guitar pedals that we've always used. So that's, it makes it a little more interesting for us, because it gives us new sounds to put into what has normally been a kind of a formulaic thing for us. And I don't like to use that word, but it is true that, when you've been around forever and you do certain type of music, there is a kind of a formula to it, in that, you've got the four people who are playing their four instruments, so there's going to be some sort of similarities, throughout the records, right? I
think that's one of the great strengths of this record, though, is, it obviously sounds like you, because it is you, but it also has a different sound to it, a different feel to it. It's the idea that you are still coming up with different variations on what you do, I think. It's like the well is nowhere near dry kind of thing.
It's a lot more fun for us to do this at this point in our career, to make, because it makes it fun and interesting, and we can explore more without getting bored with our instruments, by changing it around a bit.
Hard to build. We've already mentioned that a little bit, but I suppose we should make the point that Pete doesn't play on this one. I don't know how he feels about that, but
hard to build, easy to break. Cradle it in your arms, oh, for your children's sake. Hard to build, easy to break. Oh, one little slip, oh, that's one big mistake.
Yeah, I think the beat that I had programmed was it's kind of complex, not on purpose or anything. It just happened that I was fooling around, and that came out, and the bass line I was playing just worked so well with it that I didn't think we were going to use that beat because it was too complicated it didn't really sound like a regular drummer playing. So and normally when that sort of thing happens, we change the beat. But both Mike and I really loved how that was working as a groove, and we didn't want to mess with it. So we got more of a professionally sounding drummer, I guess, or playing drummers who could actually play that complicated machine beat. So yeah, I mean, live, we're doing it live, and it's just the beat's a bit more simplified, but it's works fine.
and it's got one of Mike's guitar solos, and again, I'm never quite sure how to define one of those, but it's a great solo.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. I think he went through a bunch of variations of it, and I just like that sort of open, spacey thing. It gives you time to think about the next note that's coming and all that kind of. I always like those kind of solos rather than filling it all in with sounds. But yeah, that worked out great. And I like also the I guess the bridges, you'd call it, where it's just kind of soaring keyboards and guitars with no vocals. Those parts, those work really well as I guess they are the choruses, but they're wordless chorus, I guess you'd call it.
The keyboard, I mean, they're not up front. They're not a lead instrument, but they give such a character to the songs that they're character actors, I suppose, if you wanted to think of it that way. It's difficult to kind of picture the songs being played without the keyboard, which obviously is what you'll do with them live.
Yeah, it's always that way. You hear a record, or when we make a record with the keyboards on it, and we don't have it live. It's kind of weird at first, but we always figure out how to play it live a bit differently, which has always been our thing. We've never been the kind of band that wants to play the record live.
I suppose it was the same with the strings on Past Taken, wasn't it? When you took those songs out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's always two ways to hear music for us, anyways.
Circe and Penelope, that puts me very much in the mind of the Caution Horses period of the band, and that sort of waltz time thing. It's a thing that you do brilliantly.
Yeah, I guess it's the only waltz one on the record, I think. Yeah, it kind of stands out that way because it is so kind of naked and a bit of a throwback for us stylistically. But I love the addition of the violin on that. That worked really well. Sounds to me like kind of Dylan Desire kind of period of that kind of playing on the violin, which I've always loved. And yeah, it's just a nice song. Flows really nicely, and it's a happy little song.
Hell is Real. To me, that is John Lennon Plastic Ono Band. The sound of that.
Yeah, for sure. There's a bit of Townes Van Zandt in there, I think, too. That kind of southern kind of double thing that Townes used to do. But yeah, definitely Plastic Ono Band era, John Lennon. because there is a song where he is it called "Love Is Real"? Lennon's song. Yeah, yeah. So I guess it's a nice takeoff on that.
I mean, it's a very it's eerie. It's a bit scary, that song, actually.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I love the doubling vocals was made it sort of a haunted movie soundtrack quality to it, which I really like.
I think everybody's playing on this record is fantastic. I don't think Margot's ever sounded better than she does on this record. I mean, Mike said that was the two of them got together very early in the writing process, and she was involved early on rather than coming in at the end.
Yeah, yeah. I think that part of it was, Margot lives on a farm a couple of hours north of Toronto, and a friend of hers had a farmhouse that wasn't being used. So Mike went up there to write. So he was right near Margot. So Margot would come over and work with him. So that was a big cause of that, I guess, was just the proximity of the two of them working together. And yeah, and I think it does help for Mark to be involved right at the beginning. Gives her more time to develop her approach to all the lyrics, and and being guided by Mike from an early stage. Yeah, definitely a helpful thing.
The whole COVID thing, and obviously you were off the road for, I don't know, 12 months, something like that. I suppose they talk about it the same way with sports people when they've been injured or something and they come back. You're excited by the whole thing again and you're hungry to get going, I suppose.
Yeah, that for sure was happening. Yeah, everybody was chomping at the bit. Yeah, it was more like 18 months as I remember it. And then we went out and we got shut down again. We did a quick West Coast thing, West Coast run, and then they shut it all down again for another 4 or 5 months after that. So there was that. We thought we were back, and then we weren't. So when we actually got back, it was we knew we were fine. We're going to keep going. That was a real relief. And yeah, it was great. And it's been great. It's been exciting to be back out there.
Shadows 2, a terrific performance it's a great song, but it's also a really great performance from the band as a whole on that.
It was a kind of a weird one to figure out where it was going. I remember from the beginning, it was more of again, an acoustic driven thing, much more laid back, and didn't have swirling keys on it or anything like that at the beginning. But then it just developed into this more orchestral sounding thing. And like I said, during COVID, we had so much time to work on stuff that we just kept adding things and seeing if we liked it. And so if we did, we just add more until we didn't like it anymore, and then we'd stop. So that one just kept going with the adding stuff to it. I think what happened there. But yeah, it's a great sounding piece, and it's it's definitely it sounds like a band playing for sure.
Again, the combination between you and Pete on this, I think, is particularly strong. That beat that Pete's come up with is very unusual.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's again. I guess it's the amount of time we had to work on the record was taking us and trying different things. If you had a much shorter period, you would just kind of do a beat or a bass line or whatever that works, and oh, that's good. But we went way beyond that time wise, so we changed things around.
In a different age, that would have been a single. How do you promote these kinds of things nowadays without having singles to put on the radio, or how does any of that work anymore?
Well, there's still a bit of that. Like we have radio people who work. They'll take a song like Hard to Build and take it to alternative radio and do whatever they have to do to get it on radio. I'm not sure what that is these days, but it's not a big thing, especially for us. We're not a radio band, so we get college radio play or alternative radio play, but no, not really any commercial stuff. So besides Sweet Jane, I guess that's still on commercial radio, but yeah, so it's not a big thing for us, but we still do pursue it, and we do pay people to do that.
Knives, that's another co-write. How did that one sort of start out?
Well, again, that was just the basics of the beat and the bass line. I had like 6 or 7 bass lines all going at once, and I sent them to Mike. Said, "Hey, choose something out of this because they're all kind of cool and they work together." So we did that. So there's one of the bass lines. The main bass line was kept, and then Mike took one or two of the other bass lines and played it on the guitar to go with it. And yeah, that's how that came about. It's really kind of simple, and again, completely repetitious. It doesn't change at all. There's just one simple groove going through the whole thing.
How does it work if you send something to Mike and he does something to it that you're not quite so keen on?
I think I would tell him, and that I'm not quite so keen on that. If I'm attached to whatever it was that I sent, meaning if I liked it a lot, um, and I liked it how it was, I would say that, and then we take it from there.
Knives have been drawn down on the whetstone of anger and spleen. Knives have been drawn of anger and spleen. Knives have been drawn.
You mentioned the violin playing on Circe and Penelope. The fiddle playing on this is very caustic. It's kind of I don't know, an old Western film or something. It's got that.
Yeah, it does. A couple of people have mentioned that Western vibe on it, and I think it definitely comes from that. And I guess that the other thing that it might come from is the one note organ thing, which sounds like a kind of a whistle in a Sergio Leone movie or something. But yeah, there's definitely that kind of high noon kind of tension going on with the violin. I really like that a lot.
Mike Tyson, that bass line is very eerie, and the keyboard is very unsettling. You can feel the ground moving under your feet, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's sort of the idea. That was to have a long figure that was kind of undulated with an undulating kind of a vibe to it. Like you're right. It's like an earthquake, like the ground moving kind of thing. That's why I wanted it to be a longer figure. So I think it's like it's kind of odd timing. I think it's like 10 and 8 or whatever. I don't really know musical stuff, so I can't really tell you. But it's yeah, it's definitely a different than anything I would normally consider to be a groovy bass line or anything. It's because it's more of a calculated, almost orchestrated kind of approach to that kind of music. But yeah, so the bass line was there, and I don't know where the other stuff came from. There's almost like a flamenco guitar on it, and the kind of a Joy Division sounding drums. And the idea was to build on the bass line by throwing other instruments on top of it as it progressed. So by the end, there's 10 tracks of everything from piano, xylophone, and bells and whatever, and key bass and all kinds of stuff, just to make it sound like it went somewhere by the end of the song. But it's basically like Flood. It's just a repetition of the main section like 4 times.
That's not going to be the easiest one to play live.
No, pretty impossible, I would say. I don't know. I don't know if we'll get around to that one. And I remember when I sent it to Mike, he's going, "Wow, what is this?" Just because the timing and the whole thing kind of weird. And I just said, "Yeah, I've been listening to too much Genesis lately. Sorry, but I really like it, so I'm going to develop it."
But again, it sounds like you, but it's a different you kind of thing, which I think there's a lot of on this record.
Well, that's kind of that was kind of the idea, was to stretch things out from our usual format, I guess you'd call it, and without going completely away from it, but taking it somewhere else that makes it more interesting for us at this stage.
throw a match. I said to Mike, and I still think this, as a recording, I think it's the best recording you've ever made. I think it's fantastic.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, thank you, but I disagree, but thank you.
Well, you probably know better than me, but you know.
Yeah, that was a tough one, like especially mixing wise, because there's so much on there that I think we were going to drop that song at one point, but I think Joby in the end, Joby mixing it, saved it. He got it to some level where we liked it again. So, but yeah, it was a tricky one for sonically for sure. You know, as a song, you know, structurally as a song, it's kind of standardy kind of sounding song. But you know, again, we just put a lot of instrumentation on it, and sort of lost control of it for a bit until we got rid of maybe some elements in it, and then got a proper mix. And yeah, it ended up like that. You know, it's funny you say that because it's for me, it's one of my least favorite songs to listen to for sure. I don't know exactly why, because I try to listen to it as to me it is kind of an homage to, again, classic rock, like almost a Rod Stewart kind of vibe. You know, I was actually thinking at the time that we're playing it that, you know, how would Ronnie Wood play this, and how would Nicky Hopkins play piano on this, that kind of thing. So I was enjoying it when we were making it, but in the end, I wasn't that keen on the song.
To me, it's got that when we were talking about, you know, songs from recollection record, we were talking about those 70s records, and they were kind of that ramshackle looseness, and that's what it reminds me of. It's those things that always sounds like it's on the verge of falling apart, but never does.
Yeah, that's why I thought of, you know, the Faces, right? Rod Stewart and the Faces, because that's what they sound like to me when they're at their ragged best. It sounds like, you know, this a song, you know? Like, you don't know. At some points you're listening to it, and it just gets so far away from any kind of melodies or structure or beats, but it sounds great, you know. They're so great at jamming that they can pull it off. But yeah, that's definitely what I was hearing when we were working on this song, and I was really enjoying it.
I was talking about Flood as being very much archetypal, your kind of style. This bass part isn't what I would necessarily associate you with.
No, not at all. Yeah, I was actually trying to do Keith Richards on "Sympathy for the Devil," like that kind of vibe, you know. Yeah, I felt for sure that we were kind of playing somebody else's song. It's when we're not that was a bad thing, because, you know, we do a lot of covers, and we like doing that. So, you know, it doesn't really bother us to play, you know, differently. I'm trying to think of the things that were like, there's not much like that on this album, but in the past, you know, we've sat down and said, hey, let's try to play like, you know, Neil Young did on so and so, and or Crazy Horse or whatever. You know, so it's not unusual for us to actually sit down and have a sound or a band in mind when we're working on a song, and this one definitely was that kind of vibe.
And those piano stabs that go through, I mean, that's a really nice accent to add to it as well.
Yeah, again, there's I love Nicky Hopkins. I love his playing on the Stones record, so I've always tried to keep that in mind.
Blue Skies, I guess, is a really nice ending to it. Brings everything to a conclusion, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was one of the first songs that Mike sent me, and it sounded just like that without the little keyboard bits in the middle, and it had the birds on it. The birds were actually there, so there was they couldn't get rid of them. So I think Mike thought we record that song eventually, but I said, no, the birds are great, leave it on. I love that. Makes it sound so natural, and, you know. Yeah, and I think Mike wanted to do a full band version of that, and I convinced him not to, because it's so beautiful as it is. You know, the vocal melody is just so nice, and everything floats and sits so nicely that we didn't take it any further than that.
It's got a very sort of Zen quality to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. We don't want to mess with that.
I guess for the mastering, it's quite nice as well, having that at the end of the record with, you know, relatively little sonic information on there and no bass and all of that to mess with the volume.
Yeah, we're it was really funny where we were mastering it or sequencing it for the master. Peter Morris insisted that the two acoustic songs had to be at the end of each side because that's the worst of audio on vinyl, right? So you want to, if you have something really not dense at sounding, that's where you want to put it. So acoustic things. And he was so excited to have two acoustics to put at the end. It's like his dream, you know, dream vinyl mastering job.
It seems one of those records where, you know, and obviously it's all a lot of work and a lot of effort and thinking and so on, but it also feels like one of those records where everything has sort of come together.
Yeah, it really is. You know, I was listening to it the other day, and I haven't heard it in a little while. And I listened to the whole thing on vinyl, and it really does have a whole, really, you know, a tightness to the sound, and the vocal consistency throughout is, you know, it's I think it's all at kind of the same level of vocal, and the same sound, which is nice. You know, on our previous records, I think, you know, vocals could be a little buried on some songs and sound differently, and a lot of reverb on other things. But in this one, it's just like straight, flat sounding, really upfront vocals, and you know, that's what really holds everything together, because you can have all these different musical backgrounds going on stylistically in each song, but the vocal just holds everything together because it sounds the same throughout, which is really nice.
You must be proud of it as a record. As I say, I think it's up there with the very best stuff you've done.
Well, thank you. That's nice to hear.
How do you feel about it? I mean, do you as happy with it as that?
Yeah, I mean, it sound, yeah, you know, it's different having worked on it for so long and having to listen to it all the time. But you know, if you do take a little distance from it, which I have a few times, not listen to it for a month or two, when I hear it again, I'm happy with it. So yeah, it's really good.
It'll be interesting to see which songs work live the best, and so as you say, Mike Tyson might be slightly difficult to play, but you know, I'm looking forward to hearing what you do with them.
Yeah, well, what I lost, we're doing pretty much exactly how it is on the record. Yeah, so that sounds pretty much like that. It's got the same structure. You know, there's no solos on it or anything, so it's all just, yeah, it's just a straight lyric flow to it. So yeah, there's no solos at all, no breaks. Yeah, so that's pretty much how it sounds live, and it's really nice. It's intense, you know, in the big PA and all that. And the other one is Circe and Penelope, very similar to the record again. We don't have the violin, so Jeff's playing something else on it. So that, you know, we're just working that one up, and that one's sounding good. And we're doing Hard to Explain, a much pared down version of that, which is, you know, it's all about the groove being, you know, tight and right, which doesn't happen every night. So we'll get better at that one. We've only been doing it for, you know, a few shows so far. And I think the next one we're going to try to put out is Knives. We'll work on that in upcoming sound checks and get it playing probably this next West Coast tour. And beyond that, I think the next one might be Flood, which will be a bit of a challenge, but we'll figure that one out. the more we're on the road, the more bored we get. So that that what we think is challenging at first, it, isn't, because we're keen to work on something different. So it gets better all the time.
It must be nice to have that new influx of material to add to the set to shake things up.
Yeah, for sure it is. Yeah. And yeah, our audience is, very open to new stuff all the time. So it's not like we feel like we're boring them or anything, because I think they do enjoy it, hearing them. When you're playing new stuff live, I always have flashbacks to this great Deep Purple live thing on YouTube. It's been on YouTube for a couple of years now, of them playing a bunch of songs off Machine Head, so Smoke on the Water, etc. And nobody's heard them. So they're playing this kind of smallish, it looks like a high school gym, but it's not. Really tiny stage. And so, they've had like 3 records out, I think, by that point. So people know their early stuff and they're going wild over it. And then they start playing their new stuff, and there's hardly any reaction to it, like Smoke on the Water. They go through that, oh yeah, little applause, and Space Truckin' and whatever else, all those songs. They did a bunch of them to very little reaction, which is always amazing to see, because this, they're all classic songs now that people go nuts over. So anyway, I always remember that when we do live stuff, to be not bothered by, lukewarm reaction. But my favorite thing for playing new albums live was what Lou Reed did with the New York record, where he was the first one I know to do this ever, where he played the whole record in the first set and took a break and then came back and did all the old stuff, which has sort of been our model ever since we heard that. Not that we do a whole album, but we've always done the 2-set thing ever since then. And that works really well, because it sets up the audience, right? So because he explains what he's doing before he starts playing. So look, I'm going to play my whole new album out. If you want to go get a drink, whatever, fine. But I'm going to do it all. It's about 45 minutes long. And so he explains that, so the audience isn't wondering, hey, when are you going to do, Sweet Jane or whatever. They're just sitting there knowing in advance that, oh, great, I'm hearing the whole record live. This is cool, So he figured out how to do that.
We hope you've enjoyed these deep dives into such ferocious beauty, and that it's encouraged you to go out and get yourself a copy. You won't regret it. You can get it from all the usual outlets, including cowboyjunkies.com. There are plenty of new Junkies shows coming up across North America over the rest of the year, so keep checking the website for more news of them. Please subscribe to the podcast, like it, share it, add reviews, and do all the social media things that alerts the world these days. Thank you so much for your support. We're really grateful for it. If you're a Spotify user, you can follow our growing podcast playlist. All the details of that and everything else is in the show notes. We'll see you next time for something special to mark our 50th podcast.
And in the end, will you make amends, or simply stand your ground? Worn and ragged